Hi guys. Today we're going to be talking about philosophers of ancient Greece. Let me move my face up here because it's going to be in the way. So the philosophers of ancient Greece are the people that first were the big thinkers. They're the ones that thought about the big questions in life. They thought about everything from science to astronomy to mathematics to government systems. And we're going to be talking about those things today. So let me make that small and present this. All right, back there in the background, that is from a movie called Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure. And in the movie, they have to meet all these historical people for a report they're writing in history. They have to pass their history final project, paper, or whatever, or they can't graduate. So they find out they're pretty important in the future, and they get this phone booth sent to them to travel through time. So they travel through time and they meet him, and that's Socrates, and they call him Socrates because that's how they pronounced it from the book. So I'll throw a little film clip of that in because I always like to show that every year because I just think it's super funny. And that's it. Learning target today is that I can identify and describe the important people of ancient Greece. So make sure that you cover that learning target in your notebook on your big three. Here we go. Socrates, or Socrates, as he is well known as in the Bill and Ted world. Socrates. Philosophy is a set of beliefs and the study of the truth. It's from the Greek phrase love or wisdom. So it's just basically like big thinking about big questions in life. He was an Athenian, Socrates was an Athenian philosopher, and he was interested in ethics. Ethics is the study of what is right and what is wrong. So he's interested in studying about what's right, what's wrong, how do people decide, right things and wrong things, stuff like that. He tried to help people find the knowledge inside of themselves. And he also encouraged people to question their leaders. Don't just accept what your leaders say at face value. Make sure you're asking questions. He was famous for coming up with the Socratic method, which is a teaching method of asking questions and using reasoning and logic to answer them. And he is still taught today. The Socratic method, it was something that I was taught as a teacher, and I'm sure that every other teacher has heard of that. In fact, they even have Socratic seminars in schools, and you probably will have one at some point. But a Socratic seminar is when you sit around and you ask questions and you answer them and you try to talk through with each other. You just have a conversation where you're asking questions and answering them. So he's famous for creating that, again, still used today. In 399 BC, he was arrested and found guilty of teaching students to rebel, and he was sentenced to death. And that's what that picture is right there. Socrates in jail and being sentenced to death, or executed, I should say. The next one is Plato. I keep clicking the wrong thing. Plato was a student of Socrates, and all of these guys we're going to be talking about are kind of like student then teacher, and then he becomes the teacher and, whatever. So this is Plato. He wrote a book called The Republic. He did not like democracy, he was probably one of the few that didn't like democracy. And instead, he decided that the ideal government should be people in three groups. The first group would be rulers by philosopher kings. Wonder why he thought of that one. That means he would get to rule. Maybe he's looking out for himself there. So he believed that philosophers should be the kings, and they had the wisdom and logic to be able to rule correctly, and so that they should be the ones in charge. Underneath the philosopher and king should be warriors, because they are the protectors, and they protect the kingdom with courage. And then after that, it's philosophers, warriors, and then at the bottom level was anybody else who was not wise or brave. So basically, anybody who was not a philosopher or warrior belongs to the lowest class. So that's how he believed that people should be divided. Plato believed women, however, this is a point for Plato. He believed that women should be educated and allowed to do the same jobs as men. So that was a good thing, because back then in Athens, it wasn't the case for most people, as we are very well aware by now. And then Aristotle comes along. Aristotle was it says Plato. Oh yeah, Plato started a school in Athens called the Academy, and Aristotle was a student of Plato. Aristotle wrote more than 200 books on government, science, health, and the planets. And he then opened a school called Lyceum. In that school, he taught that people should do not too much of one thing, but they should be very well-rounded and kind of study everything and be well-versed in everything. He also taught students about observations, which you should know very well from science. You know that when you do an experiment, what part of the experiment is to observe what's going on. What do you see? What do you smell? He taught the same thing. You should learn through observing, seeing, observing everything in your world around you and coming to conclusions from what you see. He also wrote about governments. I told you they kind of think about everything. So he didn't agree with Plato on politics and government. He wrote about his views on government and politics, and he actually came up with what we have today as what we study when we did our gummy bear governments. He came up with what governments types are. He said 3 types, although today we have many more. But 3 types back then was government by one person, king, queen, or tyrant. If one person's in charge, that's one type of government. And then a government by a few people, which we know as aristocracy or oligarchy. He lumped them together in one group because they were a few people in charge and where most people didn't have a say. And then government by many people, which is a democracy. He thought that the combination of the last two, which is combining the oligarchy with the democracy, was the best type of government. And that's what the U.S. has today, because not every single people goes and makes every single decision. We vote people in to do that for us. So when we vote people in, that's our voice being heard as to who we think is going to be most like us when they go vote. Okay. But those people that are making the decisions, it's more like an oligarchy if you think about it, because it's not every single person voting on every single decision. It's a group of people, our Congress and our president and even our judicial branches, which rule on the law. Those are the people that are making decisions in our government. So it's a combination. We have a combination of this democracy, which is all the people, because we decide who goes in there for us. But it's also a combination of that with an oligarchy, because they're a select group of people that are making those decisions for us. But he thought that that type of government was the best type of government, which is what the U.S. has today. This is just a chart to help you kind of compare the Greek philosophers. So you have Socrates, Plato, and Aristotle. So remember the main idea, the teachings of Socrates, he believed in absolute right and wrong. Plato believed in philosopher kings ruling society and did not like democracy, whereas Aristotle, he liked democracy, and he also believed observation and comparison were necessary to gain knowledge, which you do in science. Socrates created the Socratic method of teaching. He described his vision of the ideal government in the Republic, and he wrote books on philosophy and science and the 3 basic types of government. When you talk about influence today, he influenced how teachers interact with their students. He introduced the idea that government should be fair and just, and his political ideas shape political ideas of today. All right, 2 other groups we need to talk about are in Greek thinkers are historians. One is historians, and we're going to talk about a mathematician too. So before the first historian, which his name is Herodotus, people did not write history down. What we know about their history was because people have analyzed primary sources, like in Mesopotamia, the clay tablets they found. They didn't write about daily life or their history. We know about it because we looked at primary sources like clay tablets, like the things that they kept about trade, and we looked at things in their daily life that were found, and historians have put that together into what we know today. However, once we get to ancient Greece, people start coming out of the woodwork, like this guy right here, that's Herodotus, to start making information, putting it together in books. Some civilizations kept lists of rulers, but no one wrote down any events, really. They used legends and myths to explain the past. But this guy, in 435 BC, wrote the very first history book that was ever written before. And his book was about the Persian Wars. So he is called the father of history. Thucydides is also thought to be the greatest historian. Then we got to talk about mathematicians and doctors. This back here is Hippocrates. We're going to talk about him in a second. So a very famous mathematician was during this time too. He was called Pythagoras. He came up with the Pythagorean theorem, which is taught in school today. He came up with this formula right here. A squared plus B squared equals C squared. It helps you find the missing lengths of a triangle. I'm not going to explain it too much right now because you will be learning that in either 8th grade or freshman year of high school. You'll be using it. But it comes from Pythagoras, and he was during this time in ancient Greece. The next guy, Hippocrates, back there, he's the father of medicine. He came up with what's called the Hippocratic Oath. And today, when doctors graduate and they finish and they go to start working as a doctor, the first thing they have to do is take the Hippocratic Oath. It is an oath that they take that promising to put their patient's needs first, promising, all kinds of stuff. If you break the Hippocratic Oath, you cannot be a doctor anymore. He thought doctors should be concerned about their patients and put their patients first. And that's basically what the Hippocratic Oath is saying, that you will put your patient's needs first. And like I said, if you break any part of the Hippocratic Oath, you just can't be a doctor anymore. They'll take your license away. And this was made by Hippocrates. All right, I'm going to put on, I'm going to link this video right here, the Greek Philosophers video, for you to watch in Google Classroom. And then you will have to take some notes. And then your work for today is to create a meme. You're going to pick one of the people we talked about today, and you're going to create some kind of meme to show something that you've learned. If you don't know what a meme is, I've linked some examples. It's basically just taking a picture and putting some information in there, but putting a funny spin on it. So I put a couple examples that I've created myself. You take one of these people, and there's lots of pictures on the side for you to put in there and make a meme. All right. Have a great rest of your day.